Hey everybody, Pastor John here from Turin Methodist Church in Turin, Georgia, with a sermon for the week of February 8, 2026. We are continuing our adventure through the Gospel of Mark. It is action-packed, and today we have another adventure-filled story from Mark chapter 4. We're going to start at verse 35. I'll be reading from the NIV. So Jesus has been in Capernaum, which is a city on Lake Galilee. He has been preaching to people on the seashore. And starting at verse 35, that day when evening came, he said to his disciples, "Let's go over to the other side." So he's going to cross the lake. Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with him. That's key. We're going to come back to that in a minute. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. He said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" They were terrified and asked each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him." The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. So what kind of boat were they in? This is a couple thousand years ago. What kind of boat were they using? On our tour of the Vatican last summer, my family we were going up this long ramp at the Vatican Museum, and it's got artifacts. And right in the middle of this long spiral ramp is a full-size replica of this boat. This is the type of boat that they would have had there on the Sea of Galilee. And it was about 20 feet long. Not a big vessel. It's not a big body of water. And yeah, there's the back. There's the stern where there would have been a cushion, and Jesus would have been sitting. So who was in the boat? Who was in this boat with Jesus? Well, his close friends. You can assume the 12 disciples were in here, and now 4 of those 12 disciples, Peter, Andrew, James, and John, were fishermen. These guys knew boats. I mean, these are skilled, lifelong sailors. And even they were terrified when this storm came up. But what about the other boats? There's other boats. Who were these people in the other boats? These are probably people from that same crowd, those huge crowds that were coming out to hear Jesus speak. This is all kinds of people. Were they sailors? We don't know. And you got to go all the way back to the beginning of the chapter, Mark 4:1, to hear more about this. Again, Jesus began to preach by the lake. The crowd that gathered was so large that he had to get into a boat and sat it in out on the lake while all the people were along the shore at the water's edge. I mean, not only did Jesus nap on this boat, he preached from the boat to this huge crowd of people. All these people coming out trying to figure out who this Jesus guy is. There were all sorts of folk. And they were caught in the storm too. And where was Jesus during that storm? Asleep in the stern of the boat. Now remember, his friends were good sailors. How bad did the storm get that they started to get scared? And what does Jesus do? He speaks to the waves, the wind, and the water. He calmed the storm with a commanding word. His friends cried out to him, and Jesus calmed the storm. How many of you ever been on a boat? uh, this is not an uncommon thing. Some people are scared of boats. Some people go out in boats all the time. There's boats of all size, all the way from like canoes and rafts, all the way up to gigantic aircraft carriers. Boats come in all sizes. Growing up, my dad had a 21-foot sailboat. Here's a image I found online of it. It's called an Aquarius 21. It's about the same size boat as what the one was in the story today. And I grew up in a part of Virginia near the Potomac River, and that's a major river where we'd go out sailing on the Potomac. It was about 3 miles wide. One day we're out there and we hear boom, 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 boom. It was a beautiful, sunny day. We had had lunch, we're cruising around, and we just hear this boom, 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 boom. And we turn around and right back in the direction we needed to go to get to the dock, the skies are filled with thunderclouds and there's lightning flashing and you can see the rain and the wind is coming right at us, which is not a good thing when you're in a sailboat. And we just had a little outboard motor on the back of the thing, and we trimmed the sails, and we're putting into the wind, trying to get back to the dock. And my dad keeps looking back at the motor, this little outboard motor, and you can tell that something's wrong because this is a water cooled engine, and it sucks in water from the river and it spits out the water from the side of the motor and that's how it cools, and it wasn't spitting out any water. This engine was overheating, and sure enough, it died. Not only that died, but the batteries in the radio were dead. And there we are, as the storm is rapidly approaching, getting blown, the boat is spinning on the water in circles back out into the wide part of the Potomac River. And we're really starting to fret here, and we take the jumper cable that you put on the stays to go up the long metal mast, which is not a good thing to have in a thunderstorm, and we put the other end of the jumper cable in the water so if we're grounded in case we get struck with lightning. And then we're continuing. We finally Dad got the motor going again, and we're continuing to try to get back, and we ended up getting saved from out of nowhere. A bass boat comes up, and I toss him the line from the bow because we were about to throw the anchor and swim for it. And they pull us in to safety. It's no fun whatsoever being caught on a boat in a storm. There's no place to hide. There's nobody you can call. Nobody had a cell phone. This is back in the day, and the radio was dead. Only thing we could do was pray. And we can be prepared as we can be, but sometimes you still have to know when to cry out for help. You never know how Jesus will answer your prayers. My mom, who had stayed behind, was watching for us with a pair of binoculars back on the dock, and she had called 911, and the police department had dispatched this boat from a local marina that came out and saved us in the middle of the storm. What did I learn that day? When you're in a storm and it feels like all is lost, be sure to cry out to Jesus. Sometimes the storms we face are actual storms, like the tornado we had here in our little town or here in Coweta County a few years back, and sometimes the storms we face are of another type. A storm can be when anything's going wrong at school. A storm can be when someone's facing a long recovery after serious illness or injury. A storm can be consequences we face after we make a huge mistake. A storm can be a circumstance like a family member who's real sick. So it's something that we have zero control over. We still have to navigate through it. Storms come in all shapes and sizes. Some bring snow and some bring rain. Some bring wind and some bring lightning. Some bring worry, some bring tears. What do we do? What can we do? Who can we cry out to? And this is where the Christmas story comes into play. Christmas? Yes, Christmas. Merry Christmas. We learn from Jesus' friend Matthew, who was one of the guys in that boat with Jesus. In chapter 1 of his record of the life of Jesus, the Christmas child would be called Emmanuel, which means God with us. God with us? Yes. We can be assured that no matter what type of storm we find ourselves in, Jesus is right there together with us while we're in it. We can cry out to him. We can take our storm to Jesus. Jesus calms our storms. But what about the people in the other boats? They were also in the storm on the lake, weren't they? What about them? These were people trying to figure out who this Jesus guy is. And still today, there are a lot of people out there who are still trying to figure out who this Jesus guy is. This may be some of you today. My advice in your storm of question and doubts, cry out to Jesus. And you in the boat with Jesus, know you're being watched. Others are looking to see how we handle our storms. Are we exempling trust or despair? Are we full of hope or full of panic? Yes, in our scripture story today, the disciples in the boat in the Bible story, we're full of panic, but Jesus showed them and us that we don't need to panic because Jesus is in the boat with us during our storm. Are we modeling this to people in the other boats? When we're in a storm, are we modeling how everyone should call out to Jesus? Or others learning from us that Jesus calms our storms? Jesus, Emmanuel, God with us, has been in the storm calming business for a long, long time. Jesus is chill and collected enough to sleep through the storm because he knows he's got this. Because we know Jesus has got our storm and is in the boat with us, we can patiently weather these storms too, trusting in Jesus. When you're going through a storm, cry out to Jesus. When you're in the midst of a trial, cry out to Jesus. When you're in a storm of sickness, cry out to Jesus. He is with us. Cry out to Jesus. That's the sermon for this week, friends. Tune in next week as we continue our adventure in Mark. God bless.